Shalom, 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 shalom. We are live. First, I want to give all the praises and the glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakah Kadash. Yahweh means He is, the Father's name, the Most High's name. Yahweh, He is. Bahasham, in the name. Yahweh Shai, He's the deliverer, which is the Son's name. Bahasham, in the name. Rakah Kadash, the Holy Spirit, in the Paleo Hebrew tongue in which our ancestors spoke. So we always give praise and glory to the Most High in the Hebrew. For those of you that don't know what we are saying when we open up these edifications, before we begin today's edification. So as you can see, today's edification is called, and double honors to the apostles of Great Millstone. Don't forget the elders of Great Millstone, the apostles. Apostle Tahar, Apostle Rakar, Apostle Rhymelab, and Apostle Gabar. Double honors to our teachers, to the leaders who are leading this word in truth and spirit and sincerity. And salutations to my fellow Hebrew Israelite brothers and sisters out there who are woken up to this truth of who we are, the true children of Israel, and who the other nations are, and who salvation is for. Shalom, 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 my brothers and sisters out there. As you can see, today's edification is called Death, and the beginning of sorrows. Death, and the beginning of sorrows. Now, we always speak about how the debt crisis is going to play a part of the collapsing of the global system and the money system, of the fiat money system. Remember, we live under what we call a fiat money system, where we just print money. We just print money. That's all we do. It's called fiat money. The word fiat goes back to the, if I can remember, to the Latin word it goes to, right? When they call it fiat money, and I think it just means let it be, or it's a type of currency that is not, well, it is a currency that's not backed by any commodity such as gold or silver, and typically declared by a decree from the government to be legal tender. So fiat money, it was sometimes issued by local banks, but as you know, it's done by institutions, which are what they call your central banks. Now, this fiat money has no intrinsic value. It goes back to the Latin word, I believe, where it means let it be done, right? So it's, like I say, it's a currency that's not backed by anything. The whole global economy is based on debt. When you print money, you create debt. That's all you're doing. Printing, creating debt, causing inflation. That's all it does. That's all it does. Inflation. All inflation is caused by the printing of money, which is creating debt that has no value. The price goes up because more money is being pushed out into the system. That's all it is. I've said this many times before. You can buy an item today that 20 years ago, say it cost you £1 or $1 to buy in a factory that they hired 100 people to produce the item. Today they produce the same item. They produce much more of it in a much quicker fashion with less employees. So they don't no longer have 100 people in the factory. They only have 10 people in the factory. It doesn't take them a day to produce 100 items. It takes them an hour to produce 100. So now they're producing 24 times the amount. But yet the price of the exact same item, for example, a tin of Coke that you were buying 20 years ago is 5 times or 10 times the price today, not because it's costing the manufacturers more to produce it, is because your governments, your European, your central banks, whether it's the European Central Bank, the Federal Reserve Bank, the Bank of England, the Central Bank of Russia or India or Sri Lanka, everywhere, all they do is printing money, creating debt, putting more debt into the system. And that's what's going to cause the collapse of this whole system, right? Because fiat money generally does not have any intrinsic value. So it does not have a use value. It has the value only because the individuals, which are me and you, who use it as a unit of an account, or in the case of a currency or a medium of exchange, we agree on its value. We say it's worth £10 or $10 or $20 or $100 bill. So they trust that it will be accepted by merchants and other people because your government legalizes it. So it's like what it is, fiat money is just an alternative to commodity money, which is currency that has intrinsic value. So commodity money is currency that has intrinsic value. Fiat money is the alternative to that, or the opposite to that. Because commodity money, which is a currency that has intrinsic value because it contains, for example, a precious metal such as gold or silver that is embedded in the coin. We don't have that. Our coins are made out of copper and brass and they have no value. So is this for you to understand? So what you're seeing happening now is a debt created system that's going to reach its pinnacle and collapse, totally collapse the whole system. So without further ado, let's go into what she's got to say. I'm never going to bring out some scriptures. All right. I've been talking for 5 minutes. Let's let the professionals talk. We're the prophets, right? Let's let the secular world explain to you about this system and see where it's all going. Because what you're going to see, what you're seeing now is what's happening in these smaller countries, but it's soon going to hit the major economies, America, Britain, France, the Europe and the rest of it. So listen anyway. You've had my 5 minutes.
Do you remember the 80s? Glorious times, the age of extreme fashion, heavy metal, break dancing and mixtape. A strange and magical era which is still widely celebrated. But not in Latin America. They consider the 80s the lost decade. Why? Because they faced financial turmoil in the 80s, a debt typhoon which eroded their economies. What was the trigger? 2 large oil price shocks. Skyrocketing oil prices disrupted their finances, created big deficits and surpluses, took their foreign debt to unprecedented highs and pushed their economies to the point of collapse. Mexico was the first country to fall. In 1982, it declared that it will not be able to pay its debt. What followed was a series of sovereign defaults in Latin America. One country after another was engulfed in the debt crisis. Brazil, Chile, Argentina, Colombia, Venezuela, Peru, Ecuador, all of them fell like dominoes. They faced deep recession, high inflation, mounting debt, unemployment, and slow economic growth. 3 decades on, is history about to repeat itself? Look around you. Developing countries the world over are struggling with a sovereign debt crisis. One of them has already succumbed, Sri Lanka. Its economy has collapsed, ballooning debt and shrinking foreign reserves. There isn't enough money to pay for basic necessities. Of course, this crisis is of Sri Lanka's own making. The Rajapaksas mismanaged the finances. They spent more than the national income. They allowed deep tax cuts and destroyed the economy. But the world did not help. Look at the global factors at play: the pandemic-induced slowdown, the growing cost of borrowing, and Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which has increased food and fuel prices. These factors compounded the Lankan crisis, and they still persist. The fear is that the Lankan crisis could mutate. Experts say Colombo is just the canary in the coal mine. More countries are set to fall. The entire developing world is at risk. Hello and welcome to Gravitas Plus. I'm Palki Sharma Upadhyay. On the 15th of February, exactly 9 days before Russia invaded Ukraine, the World Bank issued a warning.
What she said? She said the entire world economy is at risk and is at the precedence of collapsing. Because we see it happening in these smaller countries far away from the Western world and your bright lights and bright cities and your 4x4 cars and your apartments and your shopping centers. It's coming. It's coming. It's going to be like locusts. When it hits the West, that's when you're going to see, because all of these things are going to play a major part in the collapsing of the world economy. That's going to drive us to the central bank digital currencies. That's going to drive us closer to the new world order, the one world government. That's going to drive us closer to what? To the microchip. But these things have to take place. So they're going to blame everything for the collapse from C-19 pandemic to the war in Russia and everything else. They're going to blame for it. But it's coming. It's coming. Listen carefully.
Developing nations face a looming debt crisis. The World Bank named 70 countries, 70 low and middle income countries facing debt repayments worth $11 billion. The report said this burden could crush their economies in 2022. 9 days later, Russia invaded Ukraine. The invasion disrupted supply chains, it threw financial markets into disarray, and triggered a global oil crisis. The economic forecasts became darker and starker. In March, the United Nations released this report. It said there were 107 economies that face at least one of the 3 risks. Number 1, rising food prices. Number 2, rising energy prices. And 3, tougher financial conditions.
And everything's rising because of the printing of money. That's the foundation of it. But they're going to blame everything else for this inflation. But ultimately, it's the printing of money that's flooded the market, that's created debt. All of these economies live on debt. Let her finish.
107 countries face these risks. Together, they represent 1.7 billion people. That's more than 1/5 of humanity. There are 69 countries that face all the three risks: food, energy, finance, all three. 69 countries could go the Sri Lanka way. 25 in Africa, 25 in the Asia Pacific, and 19 in Latin America. Which countries are these? We'll start with Egypt, the land of pharaohs. It is in the throes of a financial crisis. Egypt is the world's largest importer of wheat. Russia and Ukraine were its top suppliers. As they fight now, the supplies are running out. Last month, Egypt said that its wheat reserves will not last more than 3 months. Next, we have Tunisia, the birthplace of the Arab Spring. Its economy is overheating. Foreign debt accounts for 100% of its GDP. The trade deficit has widened to $800 million. Inflation stands at 7%. Fuel prices at record highs. Experts say Tunisia could soon face civil unrest. The same warning has been issued for Lebanon, the Switzerland of West Asia. Well, not anymore. In 2020, the Beirut blasts destroyed Lebanon's largest grain stores. Food prices went up by 11 times. The Lebanese pound lost 90% of its value. Public debt grew to 360% of the GDP. The war in Ukraine complicated things further. Lebanon imported 80% of its wheat from Ukraine. Those supplies have fallen. There's a bread shortage, a scarcity of sunflower oil. Lebanon has been forced to take a $150 million loan from the World Bank to ensure food security. Then we have Argentina, the land of tango, also caught on the wrong foot now. Inflation is paralyzing its economy. External debt is mounting. Argentina has defaulted on debt repayments 9 times. To avoid a 10th default, it has gone to the IMF. It wants to refinance a $45 billion loan. It may give Argentina a brief reprieve, but it will not quell the civil unrest. Analysts say Argentina is staring at a long and cold winter this year. Some other Latin American countries are also at risk, like El Salvador and Peru. They face hyperinflation in commodities, tumbling bonds, food shortages, detonating prices, and mass unemployment. Very much like Sri Lanka. Reports say both countries could soon face civil unrest. In sub-Saharan Africa, Ghana, Kenya, South Africa, Ethiopia could be the worst hit. In Ghana, debt levels are soaring. Interest payments are choking the economy. A debt crisis looks imminent. In Kenya, the debt has climbed to $70 billion. That's 70% of its GDP. Last week, they got a $244 million loan from the IMF to weather this economic storm. In South Africa, the debt has reached 80% of its GDP. There's a looming threat of state collapse, a rerun of the 2021 civil unrest. Next comes Turkey. The currency is sliding, the debt is soaring, upwards of 54% of the GDP. Inflation has touched 70%. GDP forecast cut to 3.3%. There's a food shortage. Turkey is getting 50,000 tons of wheat from India. And these were just a few examples. The World Bank says that in the next 12 months, as many as a dozen developing economies may not be able to service their debt. This will be the largest debt crisis in a generation. What about India? It will feel the impact. A few state economies are already inching towards a debt crisis. In Punjab, West Bengal, Bihar, and Andhra Pradesh, the debt to GDP ratio is identical to Sri Lanka's. On the 3rd of April, Indian bureaucrats expressed concern. They said populist measures in these states could ruin their economies and leave them broke like Sri Lanka. Now, here's the thing. The entire world is in debt distress. National budgets are at breaking point. Some governments are being forced to cut spending. Others are borrowing more to stay afloat. What can we do to stop this? How can the world prevent a debt typhoon? We spoke to experts.
How can the world prevent a debt tycoon, she called it? Well, they're not going to be able to prevent a debt tycoon because they've created this situation, and the bankers have purposely created this situation for this to happen. So let's bring out some scriptures. Let's go to the Bible. What does the Bible say? That's what the Bible says in Habakkuk 2, right? And it's funny because I was reading this to a young lady the other day. I was explaining to her what Habakkuk 2 and 6 is about. I mean, we can start at the top here, right? Habakkuk 2 and 1. It says, I will stand upon my watch and set me upon the tower, and will watch to see what he will say unto me, and what I shall answer when I am reproved. And the Lord Yahweh answered me and said, write the vision and make it plain upon the tables, that he may run that readeth it. This is what we do. We're breaking down the visions in the scriptures, the prophecies in the Bible. Why? For the vision is yet for an appointed time. These things have to come to pass. But at the end it shall speak and not lie. It shall speak. It doesn't matter that the central banks, the elites, the Illuminati, those at the top are instigating this thing. The Lord is putting the spirit on them to do this, because we have to get to those pinnacles. We have to tick those boxes. All of the prophecies of the Bibles have to be fulfilled. So for us to get there, certain things, great events have to take place. So it says the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. And it truly is. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it shall surely come. It will not tarry. Behold, his soul, which is lifted up, is not upright in him. That's Esau, the Edomites, the so-called Caucasians. But the just shall live by his faith. So we're going to live by our faith and our trust in Yahweh Bashim El Shai when these things take place, when everything collapses. Yea, also, because he has transgressed by wine, which means his philosophies, because part of his transgression is by wine, is by creating this financial system that's based on total debt. Total debt. That's Esau's philosophy. We're going to create this system that's based on total debt. That's part of his transgressions by wine. That's part of Esau's philosophy. That's part of the image of the beast. This debt-based system of printing money. He is a proud man. These Edomites today, who call themselves Caucasians, Europeans, the so-called white man, he is a proud man. Neither keepeth at home, who enlarges his desire as hell, and is as death. Because everywhere he goes, this man brings death with him. He enlarges his desire as hell. Hell is the grave. Remember, the word hell goes back to the Greek word Hades, back to the Hebrew word Sheol, which means grave. And he is as death, this man. And he cannot be satisfied. That's why they print this money. But like I said, it's all in aid of everything collapsing. But gathereth unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people. And we always talk about America is known as the melting pot. Because when that place collapses, that's when the whole system is going to fall apart. But it's going to be like a dominoes effect when that collapses. But we're seeing all of the smaller countries, they're going to bear witness. Countries like Sri Lanka and Argentina and Lebanon, they're going to bear witness to what's happening to America. What's going to happen to America, should I say. It says here, shall not all these take up a parable against him, and a taunting proverb against him, and say, woe to him, woe to him. And again, 2 Ezra chapter 15, right? It talks about woe to the world and them that dwell therein. Woe to him that increases that which is not his. That's what he's done with this fiat money system that he's created. How long? How long is it going to last? How long is this man's system going to last? It's not got long. It is going to collapse. And to him that lathers himself with thick clay. Now we go into that word many times, but we just do it for edification's sake, right? And to him that lathers himself with thick clay, to the Hebrew, Abtit. So
Strong's H 5671, Avtit.
So woe unto him that lathers himself with thick clay, which is what? Weight of pledges, heavy debts. And that's all that money printing is. It's a debt-based system. It's a weight of pledges, because it's there on the money. It says, I promise to pay the bearer. It's an IOU. When you look on the money, it says, I promise to pay the bearer. So it's a weight of pledges, right? If we look at the, say, the US dollar or the English pound, should say, let me see if it shows you what it looks like, the images. You should be able to see it on it. says if it shows you on this one here. See, this note is legal tender, if you can see. This note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. Now on the English pound, we went to the English pound. Let's see what's going on. Images. Okay, that's going to give me the coin. I don't want the coin. Let's just see. Okay, let's see if we can get one of these up. Here you go. Oops. The £5. Can you see? A weight of pledge. I promise to pay the bearer on demand the sum of £5. This is a promissory note. This is what they are. These are pledges, an IOU. This is what this is. This is the US dollar says the note is a legal tender for all debts and public and private. These are just IOUs. In the English pound, as you see, I promise to pay the bearer. It's an IOU on demand the sum of £5. So when you go back to the word abti, as you can see, weight of pledges, heavy debts, it's a pledge. So the money system is a pledge. And all it brings is heavy debts. So exactly what it is. It's a pledge, an IOU, a promise to pay the bearer. It's a weight of pledge. And it's a debt, heavy debt. The US dollar shows you all debt, for all debt, private and public, as you can see. Heavy debt, that's all this is, a debt note. An English pound, as you can see, an English pound, I promise to pay the bearer the demand on demand the sum of £5. It's a pledge. That's all it is, and that's what they've done. That's what Babylon has done. It's created a system that's based on pledges and debts. So when it says, "Woe to him that lathers himself with thick clay," because all this system is going to come apart because of this system that they created. And there's a precept in, where is it? In the Apocrypha. I'm going to go into the Apocrypha in the King James. I'm going to go to Wisdom of Solomon. There's a couple of precepts I want to bring out. Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 8, I believe. It says here, Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 8, verse 5. If riches be a possession to be desired in this life, so this is what they want you. They want you to desire the things that they want to give you. And part of this money system is what gets people these riches. If riches be a possession to be desired in this life, what is richer than all wisdom that worketh all things? So we have wisdom. Why? Because we got the truth. The Lord has found us fit to receive this truth. So we know that when all hell does break loose, when the whole system collapses, the Lord is going to bring us through. It's going to guide us through these times. Because we've got wisdom. We've got the scriptures. What is richer than wisdom? What's richer than the Bible? The word of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai, that worketh all things. Riches is a possession to reside in this life. This is what Esau wants you to be, to desire their riches. And you're going to get it through their fiat money system, their debt-based system that's dying of death. It's the beginning of sorrows. There's another one I want to grab out of here. Hold on, let's grab the Bible. Ecclesiasticus, where is it? Chapter 21. So to open up my scriptures. This is the book of Sirach, also known as the book of Sirach. Ecclesiasticus 21. See, we don't need to spend long on this for you to understand this, especially those of you that have been in this truth for a little while. Ecclesiasticus 21 verse 8. He that buildeth his house with other men's money is like one that gathers himself stones for the tomb of his burial. And that's what they've done. They've built their houses with other men's money because this money is not even theirs. It's just out of thin air. It's like one that gathers himself stones for the tomb of his burial. And this whole debt-based system goes back to the US dollar being removed from the when Nixon, remember Nixon removed Nixon moved US dollar from the gold standard. This is when it all started. This is when this system became a fiat money-based system. Nixon ends, that's what he does. Nixon ends convertibility of US dollars to gold and announces wage price controls. See, with inflation on the rise and a gold run looming, because gold and silver is real money. It's withstood the age of time. With inflation on the rise and a gold run looming, President Richard Nixon enacted a plan that ended dollar convertibility, because before that's what it used to sound like, you can convert it to gold, and implemented a wage and price controls, which soon brought an end to what they call the Bretton Woods system. There was a time when the US dollars go into a bank and you say you got $100 on you, say give it to the cashier and she'll give you $100 worth of gold. Not no more. He removed it. That's what this man did. This what introduced the fiat money system, the debt-based system which we have today. As you can see, President Richard Nixon actions in 1971 to end the dollar convertibility to gold and implement wage price controls were intended to address the international dilemma of a looming gold run and the domestic problem of inflation, which is what we got today. And we're going to see that gold run again because gold and silver is the real money. We've got the same problem today caused by this fiat money system. It says the new economic policy marked the beginning of the end of the Bretton Woods international monetary system and temporarily halted inflation, just temporarily. That's what you must understand. It says here, this national monetary system after World War II was dubbed the Bretton Woods system after the meeting of 44 countries in Bretton Woods. And you know there were definitely 44 Edomite countries, right? But none of those countries came from Africa or Asia or the Middle East. It says the countries agreed to keep their currencies fixed but adjustable in exceptional situations to the dollar, and the dollar was fixed to gold. Since 1958, when the Bretton Woods system became operational, countries settled their international balances in dollars, and the US dollars were convertible to gold at a fixed exchange rate of $35 an ounce. That's how it used to be. The United States had the responsibility of keeping the dollar price of gold fixed. So the United States had the responsibility of keeping the dollar price of gold fixed and had to adjust the supply of dollars to maintain confidence in future gold convertibilities. So they couldn't just print dollars at will. No country could print currencies at will. So this is what they did. They removed the gold standard. This is what this man did. But it was all, like I said, all these things had to happen for us to get to where we are today. So let me grab a couple more scriptures before we shut this down. That's why Second Ezra's boy is going to play a major part, boy. The prophecies in Second Ezra is going to play a major part in the collapse of this system. Major part. So lucky family, 1 second. Ah, I had to just turn something off in the kitchen there. It's lucky. So, 2nd Ezra 15. That's what the scripture says, right? I'm in 2nd Ezra 15. Yes, I am. The scripture says, right? I mean, when it says, woe to the world and them that dwell therein, truly believe that, because this collapse is going to become global. It's going to become global. So, woe to the world and them that dwell therein. We're going to see these things take part. For the sword and the destruction draws nigh, and one people shall stand up and fight against another with swords in their hands. See, when the whole global system collapses, this is what you're going to see. You're going to see that there shall be sedition amongst men. You're going to see invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor their princes, their leaders. They're going to give a shit about what they got to say or do. They're going to be burning down, just what you see going on in Sri Lanka, where they burnt down the president's home. They burnt down the presidential home and his private home last week. Just like we see happening in Lebanon. They're not going to regard their princes nor their kings, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. When people are hungry, when the whole system collapses, especially when they're purposely orchestrating the shortage of food and supplies and deliveries and logistics, they're purposely orchestrating the collapse of food and harvest and, grain and wheat. They're purposely, oh man, these people are, but it's all getting preparations for what's coming. A man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able. Believe me, man, you're going to see these things are going to materialize in these Western countries, in England, in France, in America, in Canada. That's what you must understand. This ain't just going to be happening in those, what you consider those third world countries, in Africa or in Asia. This is coming to the West. For because of their pride, the city shall be troubled. The houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid. They're going to be afraid when the whole system collapses, because the money system will collapse and it will go digital. You're going to see. When people can't afford to buy certain things, a man shall have no pity upon his neighbor. You're going to think, what has he got in his yard that I need to have some of that food he's got in his yard? How comes I can't get some of that food that he's bringing in 3 bags of shop and I've not had a bag in a week? A man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the sword. What is the modern day sword? The gun. And spoil their goods. He's going to spoil their goods because he wants it. Why? Why is he going to be doing all these things? Because of the lack of bread and for great tribulations. It's as simple as that. Because of the lack of bread and great tribulations. This is why these things are going to take place. But like I say, what you're seeing happening is being orchestrated at the very top level by the Illuminati, the New World Order. They're orchestrating this collapse. Watch and see. All of these prophecies are going to come to pass. And we're going to see. You see, we think these things can only happen in these faraway places. These what you proud Westerners call these backwater places or these third world countries. These are coming to the Western shores. Coming to the Western shores. Simple as that. When it says there, man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the sword and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread and for great tribulations. And as you know, Matthew says here, we're going to grab Matthew before we shut this down, because we're not going to spend long on this today. Matthew 24 says what? Matthew says here, see, all of these things that we're seeing happening right now with the wars, right? When we see, this is what we are seeing happening now. You shall hear of wars, which we're hearing, and rumors of wars, that ye be not see that ye be not troubled. Those of you us who are in the truth, the elect of Israel, we call ourselves the hopeful elect. Those that have come back to our true heritage, we are the Israelites, come back to our Savior, Yahweh Shai. Those of us that are trying to follow the laws, commandments, and statutes to the best of our ability. Those that are putting our faith in the Most High, Yahweh, and His Son, Yahweh Shai. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. Rumors of wars, we're seeing it everywhere. We're seeing the wars. This is a continuous thing. We're in this time, we're in this age. For nation shall rise against nation, which we are seeing, kingdom against kingdom, which we are seeing, and there shall be what? Famines. What's WHO keep talking about? They keep saying, oh, the WHO, the World Food Organization, that's the WTO, the World Food Program, the UN. They keep talking about famines and yes, WFP, the World Food Program. That's who it is. They keep talking about famines going to take place. They've been appealing. Let's go back to the most recent story that they were speaking on. Yeah. There you go. These are the most recent stories that they've been speaking about. Pills are reopening Ukraine ports to avert looming famine. How Horn of Africa drought, late rains, Ethiopia, Kenya, Ukraine, WFP, World Food Program calls for ports to be reopened as world faces. And this is the most recent report. WFP calls for ports to reopen as world faces deepening hunger crisis. Life-saving food remains trapped in a year of catastrophic hunger, with needs outpacing resources to help people going hungry across the world. This is the 6th of May 2022. This is going to be a global effect, mate. This ain't just going to be happening in these smaller countries. This is going to spread to the West. The World Food Program is calling for the immediate reopening of the Black Sea ports, including Odessa, so that critical food from Ukraine can reach people facing food insecurity in countries such as Afghanistan, Ethiopia, South Sudan, Syria, and Yemen, where millions are on the brink. We're running out of time, and the impact of the interaction will be felt around the world for years to come, said David Beasley, Executive Director of the World Food Program. This ain't just going to stay happening in Afghanistan, Ethiopia, South Sudan, Syria, Yemen. This is coming to you. Western countries. He's coming to United Kingdom, to France, to Germany, to America, Canada. Watch and see. This is coming. This ain't just going to stay over there. So go back to Matthew and it says, for nation shall rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There shall be famines, which is what we're going to see, even more spread to the west, pestilence and earthquakes in diverse places. I mean, we've been seeing earthquakes continuously around the world, earthquakes and minutes and hours. All these are the beginnings of sorrows. And that's where we're at. We're at the beginning of sorrows. It's as simple as that. So I'm going to leave it there. I just really wanted to bring this out, boy, that this death and the beginning of sorrows is here. We're going to see what's happening. These countries collapsing. These things are going to happen in these major Western countries around the world. Trust me. So on that note, I pray you are edified by today's edification, death and the beginning of sorrows. Keep your eye on what's going on in the mainstream media and in social media, because believe me when I tell you, you see they're running out of baby milk in America. They're running out of all baby food and milk in America. These things are coming to the West. Food banks are springing up everywhere. Watch and see. So I want to give all the praises and the glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakah, Kodash. I pray you are edified by today's edification. As I always say, keep praying, keep safe, and hold on to this truth. Don't let no one break your faith. This is all we got, family. We put our trust in Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai. He shall be our refuge and our salvation when all hell breaks loose. When 2 Ezra chapter 15 kicks in. So shalom, and I mean on a global scale. Shalom, shalom.